Okay, I seen this article pop up on Boxing Scene, and I've read it. I've read it at least twice now, and I'm still in just. I suppose I shouldn't really be shocked. Nothing should really shock me in boxing these days. But I just, I can't believe. I can't. Anyone can't believe this. So we all know Alexander Povetkin. Now you all know Alexander Povetkin, Olympic gold medalist in, was it Athens? I think was it Athens 04? Or where was it in 04? But either way, he was Olympic gold medalist in 04. He was a WBA regular champion for a couple of years, until I think 2-3 years till he fought Klitschko. And obviously he fought Anthony Joshua, was meant to fight Deontay Wilder, fight never happened. Fought Anthony Joshua, fought Dylan White twice, Michael Hunter, David Price, we all remember that knockout, oh boy. We all know who Povetkin is. He retired 4 years ago nearly now, come what March, after being stopped in 4 rounds by Dylan White in their rematch, after stopping him in the summer prior. So you'd think, retired and that's all well and good. Well, I'm going to read this article here on Boxing Scene. Alexander Povetkin serving 4-year ban after the discovery of unreported PED violations. Yes, you heard me correctly. Now, the 4-year ban that's not the reason behind his retirement. So when it says there, serving 4-year ban, people would be like, oh, well, 2021 to 25, that's 4 years, is it? No. It's not quite that. So I'm going to read this article here. It says, it has emerged that retired heavyweight Alexander Povetkin is currently serving a 4-year period of ineligibility following an investigation which uncovered the previously unreported presence of a banned substance, ostarine, provided by Povetkin in 2014. The case, which is part of a broader probe into systematic doping in Russian sports, is being led by the International Testing Agency, the IAT, for the International Boxing Association, the IBA, and the evidence retrieved from the Moscow laboratories by the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, Intelligent Investigations Departments, and Professor Richard McLean. All right, I want to just point out that not the first time Povetkin has been found with ostarine in his system, which I'll touch on now more so because it kind of gives me reason to explain it here. Povetkin, 45, retired in 2021 and had previously served a 1-year suspension in 2016 following the detection of ostarine and meldonium, but returned to enjoy the most lucrative period of his career by securing contests against Anthony Joshua, David Price, Michael Hunter, and Dylan White. Now, what they're saying there about the suspension in 2016, it was farcical. It was a farcical suspension. It was a WBC suspension. So it meant that he lost the ability to be able to be ranked by the WBC. He also lost the mandatory crack at Deontay Wilder, but he wasn't banned from boxing. He wasn't suspended or anything like that. He fought Rudenko in July and he fought Hammer in December of 2017, which ultimately gave him a high ranking with the WBA and WBO because they had titles, like little tricky titles, like continental titles, on the line in those fights. Now, he was meant to fight Wilder in May 2016 and he tested positive for meldonium. Meldonium was on the banned list, I think early 2016 or late 2015. I can't quite remember. I think it was early 2016. And he had stated that he had stopped taking it, but they found trace amounts. It was a bit of a grey area, and the WBC kind of said, right, we're going to make you fight an eliminator against Bermain Stavern. And actually, Stavern tested positive for an over-the-counter supplement in an energy drink. He ended up getting a slap on the wrist for that. And they basically said, we'll have you fight an eliminator of sorts against Stavern. It was December of 2016, and that's when he tested positive for ostarine. So again, not the first time. And ostarine is a PED that's been a lot of fighters have tested positive for over the years. I suspect it's not just ostarine and meldonium that Povetkin's been popped for in the past, but well, that's what's been found, but probably more in his system than just those two particular ones. But yeah, he did serve a 1-year suspension of sorts, but it wasn't really. It was, that's what Boxing Scene are not saying. He was just suspended by the WBC, but he was ranked by all the others. So I mean, what good is a suspension when none of the other sanctioned bodies follow it? And I'll go on to read here. It says, After being notified of the case and informed of the procedural rights, the athlete decided not to challenge the anti-doping violation. Of course not. It's not like he's going to fight again. Povetkin's ban came into effect on October the 21st, 2024, and will be in force until October the 20th, 2028. It's not like he's going to fight again. In addition, this is the crucial part, these athletic results from October the 25th, 2014 until the start of the athlete's provisional suspension on October the 24th, 2024 have been disqualified, including the results obtained during the boxing match held on the night of October the 24th/5th, 2014. That particular boxing match saw Povetkin knock out Carlos Takam in 10 rounds in Moscow. Ostarine is a selective androgen reception modulator commonly used to enhance performance and muscle growth. Upon retiring in 2021, Alexander Povetkin, who now serves as deputy governor of a region in Russia, I'm not even going to try and pronounce it, the years take their toll. I have all kinds of injuries that still need to be treated. The time has come for me to end my career. His record stands at 36-3-1 with 25 knockouts, but all of his accomplishments, which include winning a gold medal in 2004 and a secondary WBA strap, are now likely forever tainted. Well, I mean, if you've ever watched, and obviously Povetkin tested positive, I think, just after the weigh-in for the Bermane-Stavern fight, so that fight never happened. That's why you don't see it on his record. He ended up fighting Johan Duhaupas instead, and he was there as a fan. He actually was meant to fight Carlos Takam in January of 2017. He never did, because obviously he fought Povetkin. He got brutally knocked out. If you ever see Povetkin in that fight, that's the most jacked you will ever see him. He looked like Mr. Universe in that fight, aesthetically, and he never looked as good aesthetically from then on. Now it absolutely crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So you're telling me that since October, like, has this been known, legit known since October 2014, in which case it took a decade for it to come out? It's just, honestly, unreported since 2014. That's just mental. And I remember, and listen, I've said this, but listen, I've had my fair share of criticisms of Deontay Wilder and things like that. And yes, he was a protected fighter, but when he was signing up to fight Povetkin, and Povetkin popped for meldonium, you had people straight away saying, oh, this is all contrived by Team Wilder and this, that. And I was kind of like, well, like, surely not. And then when he tested positive again, it was like, well, look at him. He looks like someone who's juiced up to the gills. He wasn't a young man. He wasn't a young heavyweight when he tested positive in the Stavern fight, or before the Stavern fight, which never happened. He wasn't a young man. He was in his, late 30s? Mid to late 30s? He wasn't a young man. So I was kind of thinking, it does make sense. If you look at Povetkin early on in his career, when he was trained by Teddy Atlas was saying he was basically like a 4 and 6 round fighter. Because Povetkin, he noticeably had poor stamina. All changed in the Klitschko fight. He went 12 rounds with Vladimir Klitschko, in spite of the fact that he was being fouled incessantly. He was taking a lot of punches. He had superhuman punch resistance in that fight because he was taking a lot of shots, even though he was dropped legitimately. But he also took plenty of shots that didn't drop him. He was leaned on for 12 rounds, and he was still strong come the end of it. Now, when he fought Carlos Takam, which was a brilliant fight, that was a prime Takam. He laid Takam out. His resistance, his strength, stamina, everything was massively improved. This is a guy who against Marco Huck was gassing. This is a guy who against Ruslan Shagayev, a fat cruiserweight, was struggling to maintain the pace in that fight. That's the fight famously where Teddy Atlas got the picture of his dad out, Povetkin's dad, who'd recently passed away, and that kind of spurred him on. But prior to that, he was struggling. He was struggling with stamina. And from then on, Povetkin went on a tear. He beat Takam, he beat Mike Perez in a round. I think his next fight, he stopped Mariusz Wach. And that was the card, actually. He stopped Mariusz Wach in November 2015 in Russia. Forget where it was, I forget exactly, I think it was in Moscow. But that particular card was very dubious, to say the least. It was a brilliant card, but it had, who did it have? It had Ola Duradola knocking out Dmitry Kudryashov. Dmitry Kudryashov was like a Russian kind of up-and-comer. He would have been kind of like, an Anthony Joshua type figure, in a sense that he was up and coming. He was all talk, certainly in Russia. He had a lot of fanfare behind him. He was knocking everybody out at cruiserweight. And he went in there with Ola Duradola and he got knocked out in 2 rounds. And they reported then that Ola Duradola had failed a PED test. Also, Mariusz Wach, who had failed in the past for steroids, we knew about that, he admitted that. He was saying going into that fight that he was worried about not getting paid, and that the promoters, who I believe were World of Boxing, were, what was the word he used, were trying anyway to basically not pay him. And then he subsequently tested positive. Now the WBC, and say what you want to say of the WBC, they can be you know what. They exonerated both fighters because I actually done a video on this about 2 years ago, was when Dylan White was saying that he was, you know, he was hard done by. And I said it's not always the case when a fighter says I didn't do anything that they're necessarily lying, because the WBC launched an investigation and apparently the Russian, we call them the Russian anti-doping agency, were non-compliant. So the WBC had to exonerate both fighters. And I would always say, like, why would they exonerate fighters like Ola Duradola and Mariusz Wach when they're not going to bring any money into the sport? It's not like it's a Conor Benn, a Canelo, or someone like that who you can see dollar signs with them. WBC had to exonerate them because there was no proof that they failed. And when they looked for proof, they weren't given any. This is quite shocking, really. I mean, if this is happening with Povetkin, and that's happening in Russia, I mean, what? You look at someone like a Denis Lebedev, primarily his whole career was based in Russia. Denis Lebedev, I'm not making any accusations, but he was a light heavyweight until 2004. He went away for 4 years, came back as a cruiserweight, knocking everyone out, well, most of the time, and, you know, was a beast at cruiserweight. He got old, and, you know, his style, he was very easy to hit, but you know what I mean? You do wonder when you look at this. And now, like, well, the damage has been done, but if they're gonna, essentially with Povetkin, if that's gonna mean that results after TACAM and TACAM are null void, they never normally tend to turn a win for, so a loss for Povetkin, we'll say, they never tend to turn that to a no contest, they tend to keep it as is. That would mean then TACAM, Perez, Wach, Christ, who did he fight after Wach? I think it was Johan Duhaupas, Rudenko, Hammer. Then he fight Price, then Joshua, then I think it was Hunter, and then you know what I mean. So that would mean that they'd all have to be changed, would they not? I still can't believe that this has been kind of pretty much known since 2014, and it's only now we're hearing about it. Shocking stuff. Really, really, really shocking stuff. Again, am I surprised? Well, you did have to look at how Povetkin looked post Klitschko, or going into from the Klitschko fight onwards. He definitely slowed down a little bit after he was originally, after the Johan Duhaupas fight. You can say he did slow down a little bit. So, you know, did he, because those two fights, when he fought Rudenko, he didn't look particularly good. When he fought Christian Hammer, he didn't look particularly good. And then you go into the David Price fight, and there he is again, you know, sending Price into outer space. So, you know, you gotta ask questions. It's shocking stuff, though, really. And there's no recourse for him. He's retired. It's 4 years. You're suspended for 4 years. He's not going to fight again. There's no recourse. Shocking stuff. Let me know your thoughts. I just had to talk about it. Just shocking. Let me know. Hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, I'm actually going to do a live, by the way, this evening at some point. So stay tuned for that. Peace.